Hey, this is the Review Junkie, and today I'll be reviewing the new superhero film, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. As always, my review will be illustrated, and the artwork is done by myself. And if you like movies, art, and comic books, please hit that subscribe button because all my reviews are hand-drawn, and I like to get to 1,000 subscribers soon so my channel can be official. This movie stars Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, Catherine Newton, Michelle Pfeiffer, Michael Douglas, and Jonathan Majors. It's directed by Peyton Reed, who directed this whole trilogy. Now, this is a non-spoiler review, so everything I discuss will have been shown in the trailer. Absolutely no spoilers. I'll tell you briefly about the plot, the characters, my pros and cons, final thoughts, and if this is worth checking out at your local movie theater. Plot-wise, this movie picks up shortly after Endgame. Ant-Man has become a celebrity and written an autobiography, and he's living his best life. Things start to unravel when his daughter Cassie, played by Catherine Newton, tells him she's been studying the quantum realm and built this little device that can send a signal down there, and I guess it sends data back for her to study. While all of this is happening, Michelle Pfeiffer tells her how dangerous all of this is and tries to shut it off. Suddenly, there's a glitch and they find themselves sucked back to the quantum realm, albeit a bit different from their last visit. While down there, they encounter Kang the Conqueror. And of course, it wouldn't be a plot if he wasn't up to something. So, Kang needs something, and I'll leave it at that, so not to spoil anything. So, I saw this movie twice in 2D and 3D, and the 3D is non existent, which was pretty disappointing. And it didn't get better with the second viewing either. Is this a complete disaster as some of the headlines have made it out to be? No. It's not a horrible film, but it really is average at best with some moments and glimmers of hope here and there. It is definitely way better than The Eternals, Thor Love and Thunder, Captain Marvel, and Thor the Dark World. And it does slightly beat out Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness for me. And the Eternals is probably the worst out of that list. I mean, that was a complete dumpster fire. So there are some good things going on here, such as the amazing cast, and everyone is fantastic and really doing the best with what they have to work with. Michelle and Michael are Hollywood legends at this point, and the last legend being Bill Murray has a cameo. And it was nice to see him, and he brought a nice comedic flair when he arrived. There's also this awesome track that plays during his arrival, and I wish I had that song on repeat. It really got me pumped. Next pro is Paul Rudd. He's really the glue holding everything together in this franchise. He is so darn likable and really gives the film charm and personality. He has nice guy charisma written all over him. And I just want to be his BFF every time I see him. He's a good actor and has good screen presence and has the gift of excellent comedic timing. Everything that made him stand out in the last two films continues here. Now, I've only seen WandaVision and Miss Marvel, while the other shows have really been let down, so I can't really say much about Kang except what's in this film. Now, Jonathan Majors is great, and this franchise has always been lighthearted action comedies to me, so his inclusion really brought a sense of seriousness, and every time he's on screen, he has such a subtle way of delivering his lines with such calm and ease, yet it has an underlying sinister tone to it. Something about it just always seemed a bit nefarious. And I like that, and it added another layer of depth. Next is Michelle Pfeiffer. She's excellent and such a pro, and I felt that she really elevated the material for me. She gets a lot more to do here, which was a nice surprise given how shortchanged she was in the last film. Her character is hiding a secret, and I felt she brought a sense of urgency to what was happening. And every time it comes back to her, and it revolves around her secret, it feels that there are stakes involved or the stakes are elevated. Now, I have a few cons for this film, and let's start with the characters that get shortchanged. The Wasp's name is in the title of her own film, but she really isn't doing much here. She's in a lot of scenes, but just her character doesn't have a lot of lines. The same with Michael Douglas. He's just kind of there and doesn't get much to do. Cassie gets a bit more to do in this film, probably for future setup, but I don't know how I feel about her. I'm kind of torn. I'm not sure if I liked her or disliked her character. Now, this is kicking off Phase 5, and it's funny because this whole time I thought the new Thanos was Galactus, but it's actually Kang. But they really struggled here to make him appear menacing, and even though his line delivery and performance is excellent. There was just never anything going on plot wise to really build up to what was potentially in store in terms of what he's plotting. Like I said, these films have always been lighthearted action comedies for me, so I didn't have an issue with the tone going from comedy to some more serious moments, but I can understand how some audiences may be turned off because there are several moments where you feel things are at stake because of the great performances by Michelle and Jonathan, but the stakes really feel diminished when there are sudden bursts of comedy. Any sort of dread and impending doom immediately goes out the window. Now, I do have to commend the film for taking chances by changing the setting, and that aspect intrigued me, but it just wasn't enough. Even though it's big in scope, it never felt epic. Some directors just can't do epic, and films in space or otherworldly places are nothing new at this point, and it felt like we've seen this before from the odd creatures to the unusual setting. It's really about how the director can make all of the familiar seem inventive and fresh to audiences. And by now, we all know movie plots are really a variation of something else we've already seen, and this film just didn't feel unique. There are several moments where I thought it would commit to doing something risky, and it never does. It just never goes there. For example, there are things said in the trailer that led me to believe the film pertained to time travel, but that isn't the case. There are actual lines said in the trailer that weren't even in the movie, and I felt kind of tricked. There are also two interesting moments in the last 10 minutes of the film where interesting scenarios present themselves, and you think the film would take a risk then, but it doesn't. It never goes there and decides to take the safe route instead. Now, the action scenes were a bit on the light side. The third act does have a lot of things going on with explosions and special effects, but it isn't stylized in any way where it can be appreciated. It just doesn't seem choreographed, and it doesn't have the Zack Snyder action touch to it. The film also has a lot of characters, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I feel the plot could have benefited by removing the creatures in the quantum realm. They didn't add anything, and the best parts of the franchise were the family elements, and that is present here, but only within the first 20 minutes, and then it kind of veers off into other territory. There's something there's nothing wrong with that, but all the charming things like Michael Pena and the other sidekicks that brought comedy aren't here, and watching things shrink and enlarge like cars or buildings or Hello Kitty toys just aren't here. And I like those things and I felt they never got old, but we don't get any of that here. Now, the special effects are really questionable. It felt like they were standing in front of a big gigantic TV screen or a moving wallpaper. Nothing in the background looked like it was something physical that you could touch. And then other times the background was just very blurry and it just looked sloppy and haphazard. Now, Modoc makes his big screen appearance and looks fine when he initially appears. However, there is a reveal and we get some insight into the character's origin. Also, the mask does come off, but I have no idea if it was intentional or unintentional, but when the reveal happens, what is underneath is just ridiculous. And this goes back to the VFX being sloppy and haphazard. I just have no idea if it was done this way on purpose or not. And even some of the creatures in the quantum realm looked pretty ridiculous. I think they had a hard time trying to keep it serious. And it felt like so many sci fi films that we've already seen before mashed into one. I mean, remember when this person showed up in Thor Love and Thunder? Like, how does anyone take that seriously? Okay, my last con is there are two post-credit scenes, and the second one is better. Obviously, I don't want to spoil anything, but if you're hoping for some connection to Doctor Strange, the Scarlet Witch, Eternals, Fantastic Four, or Black Panther, then you're out of luck. Now, I have to bring this up. The mid-credit scene is beyond ridiculous. It was literally a repeat of Harry Styles and the Eternals, and it felt like an SNL sketch, and it actually came off rather insulting. It literally felt like it was shot the week prior to the movie's release, and I had a hard time taking it seriously. The costumes felt like something that was purchased at a Halloween shop for $2. Okay? Okay. Now, so this brings me to my final thoughts, and this film gets a 6 out of 10 from me. This is not a horrible film, and it really is average at best with some moments that had promise but were quickly abandoned. To me, Ant-Man 1 is still the best. I was literally disappointed in this one because the trailer just had so much promise, and Phase 4 has been a complete misfire with the exception of Shang-Chi, and I think the MCU has kind of lost their way because they shot themselves in the foot by making everything interconnected, and the shows have largely been awful. How can they possibly keep outdoing themselves after Endgame? There just comes a point where you can't and you just run out of ideas. Now, phases 1 and 3 always felt like they were building towards something, but phase 4 and 5 really seemed directionless and pointless. And even though this is a letdown, I would still suggest you see this if you're a big fan of superhero films, comic books, and love the MCU. These events are really meant to be seen on the big screen. Hopefully, this review helps set expectations. Now, I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you like, please subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. Hit that thumbs up button. Feel free to share this with your friends. Thanks for checking this out, and leave your comments on whether you like the film or not. And if you happen to have a movie you'd like me to review, please let me know. I'd be happy to watch and illustrate it for a future video. Thanks again, and I hope the pictures put a smile on your face.